And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome aboard for those of you with marine interest. I'm National Weather Service meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Marine Weather Outlook as we head through Sunday and Monday. And we certainly have had very active weather here for the early new year. We have had a couple of very strong and deep low pressures come out of the North Pacific into the Bering, and then we've had high pressure sitting up in the Arctic Ocean extending into northwest Canada. And it's the pressure gradient between these strong systems that has caused really brisk easterly winds, in some cases gale to even storm force along the Arctic coast and through the Chukchi Sea coastline, Bering Strait. And certainly the potential for some Polinias to open up along the west and northwest shorelines. They wouldn't last long just because they have a tendency to want to refreeze rather quickly, but we do have ice shifting around with these strong winds, making for dangerous ice conditions, let alone visibility problems at times, ground blizzard, whiteout conditions in some areas. Now, further south along the southwest coast, Kuskokwim, especially here in Bristol Bay, we've had a push of warmer air above freezing along with strong winds, so that has really helped to melt and break up the ice here in Bristol Bay. That will be the case here going for the next couple of days. We don't expect any real redevelopment happening there. And also the easterly winds have pushed the ice a bit further west here in the northern parts of the Bering Sea, south of St. Lawrence and just west there of St. Matthew Island. But that westward movement should slow up once the low lifts further north and weaken. So here's the center of low pressure. It'll gradually be filling as we go into Sunday afternoon and Monday. But early Sunday morning, like 3 a.m., we expect the low to be around 948 millibars with this occluded front wrapped around it. Secondary low trying to take shape near Kodiak Island. And by Sunday afternoon, we have that secondary low just off of the Kenai with another little low circulation located west of Haida Gwaii. And as this front works into the northeastern Gulf and Panhandle, areas here will pick up some light to moderate snow. 3 to 5 inches expected with some winter weather advisories recently issued this Saturday afternoon for those areas for Sunday evening into early Monday morning. And as the low wraps up here, it'll drift further northwestward toward the Gulf of Anadyr and gradually weaken. Areas of the interior into northwest Canada will see some areas of patchy, mainly light snow and blowing snow as the moisture from this system and its front work its way further north and eastward. The only other weather system we'll keep an eye on of any concern maybe as we go into the week ahead would be low pressure Monday afternoon, still well southwest of the Aleutians. So looking at marine weather outlook here for the Panhandle, southeast inner channels, Stevens Passage, Dixon Entrance, 15 to 20 knots. Southeast winds, waves 2 to as high as 4 feet, Dixon Entrance. Northeast winds, Lynn Canal, 2-foot waves. This area will see periods of light to even moderate snow Sunday evening into early Monday morning, as will areas down here, Ketchikan toward Hyder. Easterly winds, offshore flow ahead of this front on Sunday morning and afternoon. Could be as high as 40-knot gales there, Cape Suckling, where highest waves will be by Monday. Inner channel, southeast winds, 15 knots, waves 2 feet, maybe 4 or 5 feet around Dixon Entrance. 2 feet north winds there, 15 knots there in Lynn Canal. And then kind of a mix of winds, northeast, east, westerly in the vicinity of the nearshore waters of the Gulf Coast. The northwestern Gulf Coast, brisk east to southeast 45-knot gales here outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance. Easterly winds 35-knot gales within the open waters here of Prince William Sound. Northeast winds 25 to 30 knots upper middle Cook Inlet, and then southeast winds there at the entrance 35 knots and waves 8 to 9 feet. And across the region on Monday, we expect those winds to come down considerably. Variable winds only around 10 knots within the entrance of Cook Inlet to along the Kenai coastline and outside of Hinchinbrook Entrance. East winds 15 knots within Prince William Sound. On Sunday, winds will be predominantly southwesterly across Kodiak Island down through the Alaska Peninsula. 25-knot southwest winds either side of Kodiak Island, as high as 35 to even 45 knots north of Cold Bay, where the highest waves will be here in that southeast corner of the Bering Sea, some waves in excess of 20 feet. Come Monday, though, look for west-northwest winds 15 to 20 knots around Kodiak Island and southwest to west winds around 20 knots as we trail out along the length of the Alaska Peninsula. And by the time we get to the eastern Aleutians, we have the highest waves Sunday north of the eastern Aleutians here in the lower southeast quadrant of the Bering Sea. Some of those waves in excess of 20 feet, even pushing maybe near 30. But we have southwest to west gales, 40 to 45 knots, all the way out from the eastern into the central Aleutians, falling off to 35 knots west of Adak, and then westerly winds at 30 knots west of Kiska. Waves generally, though, still running around 20 feet either side there of the Aleutian chain. Monday, though, winds do come down even further. Southwest winds 15 to 20 knots. Eastern Aleutians variable 10 knots around Atka and Adak, and they try to go back around southwest to westerly 15 to 20 knots there on Monday. The center of deep low pressure will continue to lift northward on Sunday and be located just east of St. Matthew. Ahead of it, 40-knot southeasterly gales into Bristol Bay. Southeast storm force winds to 50 knots there just outside of Kuskokwim Bay once you get into the open waters. And then easterly to southeast winds 40 to 45-knot gales out of Norton Sound and along the lower Yukon Delta as well as near St. Matthew. But on the backside of the occluded front and the circulation of low 45-knot westerly winds in the Pribilov Islands with waves as high as 24 feet. And then for Monday, winds come down considerably, especially along Bristol Bay and Kuskokwim Bays. Winds will be out of the south-southwest, 15 to 20 knots. Look for southeast winds to 30 knots within the wider gap here of Norton Sound. South winds along the lower Yukon coast at 25 knots, and west winds there, St. Paul and St. George to 30 knots with waves of 16 feet. And then finally, as we round up through the Bering Strait and into the Arctic, look for easterly 35 to 40 knot gales pretty much from Point Hope southward through the Bering Strait. So ice could shift around. Also to the north, we're looking at 25 to 35 knot easterly winds there as you get up toward Point Ley and Utqiagvik. And then winds as high as 40 to 50 knots vicinity of Barter Island and Kaktovik, where, again, ground blizzard conditions may exist in areas along the Arctic coast through Sunday into Monday. And as we go into Monday, not a whole lot of change. Still winds as high as 50 knots in the vicinity of Kaktovik, with blizzard conditions along this area here of the Arctic coast. As we drop through the Chukchi Sea, look for east-southeast winds to 30 knots all the way down through the Bering Strait and turning maybe more southeast to south there in through the north side of St. Lawrence Island.